Well, since the lockdown was introduced in South Africa, some employees are worried about how much they're going to earn in their April salaries. And there are a number of concerns about the UIF processes and whether or not paying certain debts will result in the negative for their financial records. So for more on this, we're joined by Devan Moonsamy, who is CEO of Ichaf Training Institute. Thank you very much for coming through, Devan.
Hi, Colin. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, firstly, should anybody be worried in as far as the completeness of their salaries at the end of the month?
People should be worried, and I think it goes without saying it's a desperate time at the moment, and I'm going to state the obvious. Everybody, whether we like it or not, are going to be affected who are not receiving full salaries. And indeed, people will be very worried and concerned. There's bond payments, there are car payments, store credit card payments, school fees. There are so many things. I mean, we can't for certainty tell what is a priority in your household or my household or the general South African household. But for certainty, we can say that many organizations have cut back on the wage bill, and many organizations have informed their employees that they will not be getting full salaries, and in some cases, leave days need to be taken to offset a long-term sustainable plan. Initially, we thought it was just small organizations that were hardest hit. We're now seeing through media and through other media statements from big companies that they too have been severely hit by this problem.
So now some employees have kids, others have elderly parents that they are taking care of, and many are breadwinners. Surely they are worried at the moment. So what can they expect? How much percentage difference is going to come into their bank accounts? And where does one really go? You know, this time around, you know, a touch is a move. Once you touch 1 cent out of 1 rand, it's 99 cents, and that doesn't have the same value as the balance.
Absolutely. People are going to have to make decisions now in terms of what is more important to pay at the end of this month and next month, depending on how long this actually lasts for, in terms of how your company is going to restructure payments to their employees. So in some cases, you're going to have to sit down and look at your budget and try and determine what is high priority. For most South Africans, high priority would be things like food, grocery, medicines, and a roof over your head. For the South Africans, for the people who are severely affected, the advice really would be to consult with your providers of credit. This would be banks. This would be people you are paying store credit to, as an example. Communication is key. And this will then help you ease the pressure of what to pay and what not to pay. If they are then made aware that this is the situation at the moment, then they will also be able to advise you reasonably in terms of what it is they will expect, and in some cases give you even a payment holiday.
Now, in the coming few days, the payroll department will be running its list of salaries, and according to the allocation in the PESAL, how will this be affecting employees, and what should they do if, you know, there's a shocking decrease in their expected income?
I'm going to advise people who are watching, just like we've advised some of our learners who've been making contact to ask about this kind of thing. We have to understand that this is a global thing at the moment. It's not uniquely South Africa. We can see world economies now suffering as a result, and as a result, it has a ripple effect into business and organizations. So employees inevitably will be affected. So, and this has a knock-on effect. So if you had two people in a household, partners who were employed, and one person is now suffering as a result, then, and the other is stable, this will definitely have a knock-on effect. So for those individuals, I'm going to say communication and planning. Also be very, very aware that if we are able to communicate as far as payment holidays are concerned and get clarity beforehand, this might not necessarily affect our credit record later. I would also like to remind people who are watching that a payment holiday doesn't necessarily mean, it does not mean that you are exempt from pay. It simply means that the credit agreement will now be adjusted for a longer period. So you'll be extended by say, 3 months or 2 months or whatever it is they're offering you. So it's not like you're exempt. So beware that there will be an accumulation of interest charges and perhaps even other charges, but you only will be exempt for now, but you'll have to pay it eventually. These are the options that some South Africans are now exploring. And I know that many financial institutes are very open to having this conversation with people. So I'm going to again encourage everybody, speak to your employer, speak to the creditor, go back to your financial institute and ask for options.
Devan, I don't want to generalize on this one. I mean, like we always talk about financial literacy and sticking to strict budget plans. But you know, there are times when people are flat-footed, and complacency during this time when you get a shortfall in your salary will lead to people to now wanting to reward themselves. I mean, like if you look at some of the conversations on social media, many people are angry about alcohol, access to alcohol. If we're talking a budget now and they have access to alcohol later, how will they choose between a strict budget and a bottle of beer?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and people have been posing the question on some of our platforms. And I know you even wrote a book on finance, so you understand this landscape in terms of what we need versus what we want. So in this instance, I think it does help that government has put certain restrictions. You've used the example of alcohol in this instance, but we've come through from the festive season, and South African culture, people tend to overspend. People tend to overspend during the festive season, and people are sort of recovering from an over-abused budget during December and going into January. We've just come out of January, and now in March and April, we're experiencing such a massive setback. It requires lots of rational thinking, and I think as families, people now need to sit down and come back to book in terms of understanding what's important and what's not. Easier to say it than to actually do it, but I do believe that there's life after COVID-19. Organizations are talking about sustainability plans, so we will get through this. It's a very difficult period, and if there's one other message I'd like to express, please be resilient. This will definitely pass if we make the right decisions now.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, eh?
Thank you.
Devan Moonsamy, CEO of Ichaf Training Institute, speaking to us about concerns over salary shortfalls at month end.